Your cloud services are completely eroding your profits, and it's completely hidden from you.
Secure.
Hi, I'm Bob Jamieson with CSM International with Episode 5 of the Data Sovereignty series. The cloud pitch goes like this. Stop buying servers, stop paying for data centers, stop hiring people to maintain infrastructure, just pay for what you use, and it's simple, predictive, and cheaper. The bill that actually arrives 6 months later tells a completely different story. Today, we're looking at the actual math, the line items the pitch deck left out. The cloud is cheaper claim became conventional wisdom somewhere around 2012 to 2015 when the early adopters were running relatively simple, variable workloads that genuinely benefited from the elasticity. Spun up capacity when you need it, release it when you don't, and pay the difference. For those use cases, the math worked, and the vendors built their entire marketing narrative around those use cases, generalizing the conclusion and repeating it until it became received wisdom across the entire industry. The problem is that most enterprise workloads are not those use cases. Most enterprise workloads are stable, predictable, and run continuously, which is precisely the profile where the cloud economics are the weakest and on-premise economics are the strongest. Nobody in the vendor sales community is going to walk you through that distinction unprompted, and that's what this episode is for. So let's walk through the line items that are systematically left out of the cloud is cheaper pitch. So compute costs are just the beginning. Cloud compute pricing, the headline number that vendors leave with, covers the virtual machine or the container running on your workloads. It does not cover storage, which is billed separately. It does not cover networking, which is billed separately. It does not cover database services, the load balancers, the monitoring stack, the security tooling, the backup systems, or the support tier that makes any of those services usable at the enterprise level. An organization that price compares cloud compute against on-premise hardware is comparing one line item against a fraction of the total. The full cloud bill for a comparable enterprise workload almost always includes 8 to 12 distinct cost categories, each of which with its own pricing model and each with its own capacity to surprise. The egress fees, the hidden tax on your own data. This is the cost that surprises organizations when they first encounter it. Cloud providers charge you to move your data out of their environment, not into it, out of it. Reading data within the same region is generally free or low cost. Moving data out to your own systems, to another provider, to a customer, or to a backup location is billed per gigabyte. For organizations with modest data volumes, this is manageable. For organizations running data-intensive workloads, analytics, media, large-scale applications, egress fees can represent a significant and growing fraction of the total cloud spend. And because egress pricing is often not prominently featured in the initial cost model, it lands with a shock rather than a plan. It also creates a quiet lock-in mechanism. The more data you accumulate in the cloud environment, the more expensive it becomes to move it. The egress fee functions as an exit tax on the decision to leave. The reserved instance gamble. Cloud providers provide substantial discounts, sometimes 40 to 60% of the off-demand pricing, if you commit to using a specific resource for 1 to 3 years in advance. These are called reserved instances or committed use discounts, depending upon the provider. The discounts are real. The catch is that you are now making a multi-year capacity commitment in an environment where actual needs may change, which recreates almost exactly the same capital planning problem that the cloud pitch promised you'll never have to do again. Except now, you're locked into a vendor contract instead of a hardware amortization schedule, and the unused reserve capacity is paid for regardless of whether you use it. So as always, there's 3 implications to this. The first implications for governments. Public sector organizations have been pushed aggressively towards cloud adoption through the mandate and procurement incentives over the last decade. The cost premise underlying many of those mandates deserves scrutiny that is often not received. Several government audits in the US and UK have found that the actual cloud spending consistently exceeded projections, with egress fees and underutilized reserve capacity among the primary culprits. The organizations that fared best were the ones that conducted rigorous workload-specific cost modeling before migration, not after. The ones that accepted the vendor-provided cost estimate as a baseline have found themselves managing budget overruns that the original business case didn't anticipate. Second implication is for companies. A quiet but significant trend has been underway for several years in the enterprise technology world: workload repatriation. Companies that moved aggressively to the cloud, some of them at a significant migration expense, have been moving specific workloads back to on-premise or colocation infrastructure while running the actual numbers against their actual bills. This is not fringe behavior or a sign of technical failure. This is a rational economic decision-making. When a stable, high-volume workload costs 3 to 5 times more in the cloud than it would on owned hardware over a 3 to 5 year horizon, the math eventually forces the conversation that the original migration decision skipped. The right framework is workload by workload total cost of ownership modeling. The same tiering discipline that we applied to data in episode 3 applied now to compute. Variable, unpredictable workloads. Cloud often wins. Stable, continuous, high-volume workloads, on-premise or co-location is frequently more cost-effective when the full build is counted. Implication for the future. The hyperscale cloud providers are aware of the repatriation trend and are responding to it, not primarily by reducing prices, but by deepening the integration and expanding the ecosystem of services that make leaving them progressively harder. The bet that they're making is that the switching costs will exceed the cost of saving of repatriation for most customers. For many organizations, that bet is correct, not because the cloud is cheaper, but because the exit cost has been carefully engineered to be high. Understanding that dynamic before you migrate is far more useful than discovering it after. The organizations making the best cloud decisions right now are treating migration as an architectural decision with long-term costs and exit implications. It is not a default move that eliminates infrastructure thinking. Here's the idea I want you to take away from this. Cloud is cheaper was never a universal truth. It was a true statement about specific case of workload made by vendors with strong financial interest in its generalization, repeated until the nuance disappeared entirely. The actual statement, stated honestly, is this: cloud is cheaper than on-premise infrastructure for workloads that are genuinely variable, short-lived, and where capital and operational overhead of ownership exceeds the premium of the rental model. For stable, continuous, high-volume workloads run by organizations with organizational maturity to manage the owned infrastructure, cloud is often significantly more expensive over any horizon longer than 2 years. That's a more complicated sentence than cloud is cheaper, but it's also more accurate. And the gap between the simple version and the accurate version is where the substantial amount of organizational money disappears every year. The question to ask for every workload is not should it be in the cloud, it's what does the 5-year cost picture look like for this specific workload in each environment, including exit costs. That question takes longer to answer, but it produces better decisions. Please let me know your thoughts about runaway cloud costs and if they're impacting your bottom line. In the next episode, we go deeper into the cost that vendors really don't want you calculating. Not what the cloud costs you to run, but what it costs you to leave. The lock-in economics that turn a rental model into something that looks more like ownership, except you don't own anything. Until then, if you want more of this type of analysis without the sales pitch, please subscribe. And I'll see you on the next round.
System breach detected. Initializing defense protocols.